Hey guys, tonight we step into a world where the stakes are sky high, the boots are heavy, and survival is far from guaranteed. You're not lounging in your bed. You're about to be drafted into the United States Army during World War II. Imagine this. The year is 1942. The radio's buzzing with Roosevelt's latest fireside chat, and your mom's still trying to feed you an extra helping of meatloaf like it might save your life. But that letter in your hand, it's not fan mail. It's your draft notice. You, my friend, are headed for boot camp. And let's be honest, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and the local time down in the comments. I love seeing where you're all tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It starts with a number. You are 324-76-5089. No one cares about your name anymore. You're loaded onto a bus with a bunch of other shell-shocked 20-year-olds all trying to look tougher than they feel. Someone cracks a joke about the food. Another throws up before even leaving town. You stare out the window, wondering how this became your life. Then, Fort Benning, Georgia. Hot, humid, and filled with men who seem to have lost the will to blink. Your head is shaved within 10 minutes of arrival. "Welcome to hell, boys," says a sergeant who looks like he chews bullets instead of gum. His breath smells like burned coffee and regret. Basic training is not a Rocky montage. You don't become a hero with inspirational music in the background. No, you're learning how to march in sync, dig latrines, and assemble a rifle in the dark while someone yells in your ear about your mother. Your blisters, sweat, and mosquito bites pretending to be disciplined. One fact, American infantry training in World War II lasted about 13 weeks. Not enough time to turn a teenager into a soldier, but apparently enough to send you into combat. And here's a quirky bit. Toilet paper was rationed in training camps, so soldiers often got creative or desperate. You might come out of the latrine more haunted than you went in. Your feet are sore all the time. You learn to clean a rifle like it's a newborn baby, and you sleep with it like it's your childhood teddy bear. You're woken up at 4 a.m. for motivational jogs that feel more like punishment for existing. Historians still argue whether the psychological prep in boot camp really helped in the long term, or just broke men down faster. One thing's for sure, you are no longer the person who stepped off that bus. Your new normal includes crawling under live fire while being screamed at by someone who thinks empathy is a waste of oxygen. You learn that K rations taste like sawdust and sadness, and you've eaten so many boiled eggs, you may never feel joy again. Still, somehow you start adapting. You shoot straighter, march longer. You even manage to make a friend, Private Hal from Brooklyn, who swears he's going to marry a Hollywood actress if he makes it out alive. You don't tell him the odds, you just nod and laugh. And speaking of odds, statistically, American infantrymen in World War II had about a 1 in 4 chance of being killed or wounded in major campaigns. That number rings in your head every time you look around the mess hall, wondering who among you won't be coming back. Then, there's your first live grenade training. You pull the pin, heart pounding in your throat, and hurl the thing like it's a cursed potato. It explodes farther away than expected. A tiny victory. The sergeant grunts something almost like approval. You feel, briefly, like maybe you'll make it, but the days blur together. Mud, sweat, drill, clean, repeat. You get through it not because you're brave, but because there's no other choice. It's either become a soldier or let the machine roll over you. Then one day it's over. You stand in a line, not quite at attention, while a bored lieutenant reads off shipping orders. Your name's on the list. Next stop, the war. You're given a 72-hour pass before departure. It sounds generous, but you barely have time to breathe. The Army issues you everything they think you'll need. an M1 Garand rifle, bayonet, entrenching tool, a duffel bag stuffed with olive drab everything, plus a pair of boots that somehow manage to blister both your heels and your sole. You line up again and again for gear checks. Everything is inspected, double-checked, and packed with the cold efficiency of an assembly line. You're told not to lose your helmet. You immediately lose your helmet. Then you find it under Hal's cot. He's using it as a cereal bowl. He shrugs and says, multitasking. You make a mental note not to eat anything he offers you ever again. The base becomes a blur of final drills, awkward goodbyes, and last letters home. You write to your mom, pretending everything's fine. You tell her you're excited to see the world. You don't mention the part where you're not sure you'll come back from it. By the way, did you know the military let some soldiers record vinyl letter records to send home instead of writing? You think about it, but the idea of your voice reaching home before your body does is too eerie to consider. On the last night, you lie in your bunk staring at the ceiling, knowing this is the last real mattress you'll sleep on for a long time. Your stomach knots, not from fear exactly, but from something deeper, something you can't name. Then morning comes. You're herded toward the trains like cattle, your duffel bag digging into your shoulder. The weight of it, nothing compared to the weight in your chest. You're on your way to the port. Historically, soldiers shipped out from several key U.S. ports, like New York and Norfolk. Your group's headed for New Jersey. The train ride there is quiet, mostly. A few guys try singing, but the tune dies off after a couple verses. No one wants to admit it, but you're all thinking the same thing. This might be the last time we see America. A stop at a supply depot along the way gives you a brief distraction. You trade a comic book for an extra pair of socks. Socks, you've learned, are now a form of currency. You'll come to value them more than you ever imagined possible. At the port, it hits you, the sheer scale of the war machine. Ships everywhere, crates, soldiers, officers barking orders like they're trying to hold back the tide. And then there's your vessel, a troop ship that smells like rust, diesel, and desperation. It's gray, hulking, and about as welcoming as a prison barge. You're funneled up the gangplank with your unit. The ship's decks are a maze of cramped bunks, stacked 5 high, each mattress thinner than a pancake and far less comfortable. You find your spot and immediately regret every complaint you ever made about your bunk at Fort Benning. A rumor spreads. There might be steak on the menu tonight. That turns out to be a cruel joke. What's served instead is something that may once have been meat, but now resembles a sponge that lost a fight with gravy. One solid historical truth: troop ship meals were notorious, and seasickness, oh, that's real too. Within hours of leaving port, guys are retching over the rails. Hal pukes into a trash can, then declares, "I'm still marrying Rita Hayworth." You nod weakly, wondering how long the Atlantic is supposed to be. Fun fact, or not so fun, depending on your stomach. To conserve space and supplies, the Army sometimes gave soldiers saltwater soap. It didn't lather at all, so now you're dirty and dizzy. Somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic, you finally realize you're not just leaving home, you're leaving everything you understood about safety, about certainty. There's no going back. Nighttime on the ship is strange. It's dark, blackout conditions for safety from U-boats, and the only sound is the humming engines and the occasional quiet snore or muttered prayer. You can't see land, you can't see stars. You feel like you're floating between worlds, and in a way, you are. Historians still argue whether the experience of shipping out unified men or alienated them further. Some say the crossing forged brotherhood. Others say it deepened the quiet fear no one dared speak. For you, it's both. You feel closer to your bunkmates than ever, and yet more alone than you've felt in your entire life. You drift to sleep with your fingers curled around the strap of your rifle, not because anyone told you to, but because it's the only thing that feels solid anymore. You're not sure what awaits on the other side. But one thing's for sure. You're not the same guy who stepped onto this ship. The Atlantic stretches on forever. Days melt into nights, nights into an endless rocking sway that throws off your balance even when you're sitting still. You get used to the taste of metal in your mouth, whether it's from canned rations, the ship's air, or the low-grade coffee served by a cook who might actually be trying to poison you. At first, the troop ship feels exciting, almost like a school trip gone terribly, terribly wrong. But by the 5th day, the novelty wears off. You're bored, you're nauseous, and you're convinced the guy in the bunk above you snores in Morse code. Your entertainment options? Well, there's poker, reading the same comic book 17 times. Of relief sweeps over the deck. You've survived the crossing. You're alive. You're cold. And you're prob, or joining a group of guys, arguing over whether Rita Hayworth or Veronica Lake is the better pinup. Spoiler, it ends in a fistfight. You try to stay sane. You write letters, most of which will be censored before they ever reach your family. You keep your gear in order. You practice drills on the slippery deck, clutching your helmet every time a wave hits hard. You cling to routine because it's the only thing left that resembles normal. Mainstream historical fact here. On average, troop ships carried up to 15,000 soldiers, crammed like sardines below decks. Sanitation was imaginative. Some men didn't change socks the entire trip. A brave few tried bathing in freezing salt water. The rest? They accepted the stink and leaned into the misery. One quirky tidbit: soldiers were advised not to throw garbage overboard during the day. Why? It could attract German U-boats. That's right, your potato peelings might get you torpedoed. So trash was stored until nightfall. The ship began to smell like a landfill in a meat locker. And yet, even with all that, boredom is the real enemy. The fear comes in waves, literally and figuratively. Every now and then the alarm blares. You're herded to your assigned lifeboat station, heart pounding, expecting the worst. False alarm. Just a drill. You tell yourself it's fine, but your nerves say otherwise. One night you wake up sweating. Sure, the ship's been hit, but it's just a guy having a nightmare 2 bunks over. I dreamed I was already dead, he mumbles. No one responds. Historians still argue whether the crossing hardened soldiers or wore them down before they even reached combat. For you, it feels like a slow chipping away. You arrived on the ship a little scared, a little excited. Now you're just dulled, floating forward because there's nowhere else to go. Then without fanfare, the ship slows. The engines rumble lower. And finally, one misty morning, someone yells, "Land! England, sort of." You can't actually see much, just vague outlines of docks and cranes through the gray drizzle. But the cheering starts anyway. A wobbly, never eating boiled cabbage again. Disembarking is chaos. Officers barking orders, duffel bags flying, someone tripping on the gangplank. You step onto solid ground for the first time in weeks, and your knees buckle like you've forgotten how legs work. The air smells like coal smoke and mud, but to you it smells like victory. You're herded onto British lorries, trucks with names like Bedford and Austin, and driven through narrow country roads to a temporary staging camp. The hedges here are taller than your house back home. Everything feels small, intimate, like the war hasn't quite arrived. You pass children waving from windows, women in headscarves pedaling bicycles, and signs that read, "Keep mum, she's not dumb." You think it's about not gossiping. Or maybe someone's just got it in for someone's mom. Hard to say. Your camp is in a muddy field somewhere in southern England. You're assigned to a Quonset hut with a leaking roof and a floor that squishes. The army assures you it's temporary. You're not sure whether to laugh or cry. One of the British guards offers you tea. It's hot, milky, and oddly comforting. You don't understand a word he says after that, but you nod a lot and hope you didn't just agree to marry his cousin. Still, for the first time in weeks, You sleep on land. The bed is awful. The blankets smell like feet, and a draft blows directly into your face. But you don't care. You made it across the ocean. You're one step closer to the war, and it's waiting for you. Morning comes with a bugle call that feels more like an insult than a wake-up. You're still tangled in a damp wool blanket when the sergeant kicks the door open and bellows something about chow and inspection. Welcome to England, home of rain, mud, and drills. Your first full day at the staging camp confirms two things. The British countryside is absurdly green. The American army will absolutely find a way to ruin it for you. You're marched through puddles the size of bathtubs to the mess tent, where you're served eggs that jiggle suspiciously and toast that could double as roof shingles. Outside, a line of sheep watches silently, probably judging you. But despite the muck, the camp buzzes with tension. You're here to wait, train, and prepare for whatever comes next, which no one will actually tell you. Everyone knows the invasion is coming. You just don't know when, or where, or if you'll make it back from it. Mainstream fact: before D-Day, over 1.5 million American troops were stationed in the UK, scattered across bases, farms, and converted estates. You and your unit are in one of those hastily assembled camps, meaning leaky huts, muddy tents, and guards with more attitude than ammo. You spend your days running obstacle courses, practicing beach landings on fake coastlines, and getting yelled at for not polishing your boots, even though they're literally covered in cow dung. You climb ropes, storm pillbox mock-ups, and rehearse loading onto landing craft again and again until it becomes muscle memory, or your knees give out. Then there's gas mask training. You have to wear one while running drills and know you're not supposed to throw up inside it, though at least 3 guys do. One of them swears he saw God. The nights are quieter. You scribble in a little notebook you keep under your pillow. Notes to home, mostly. Things you'll probably never send. You hear distant thunder and wonder if it's real or just the sound of war getting closer. Hal tells a story about stealing a pie from a bakery and getting chased by a British grandmother with a rolling pin. He swears it happened. No one believes him, but it makes everyone laugh. One fringe detail you won't find in the average textbook. Some units were stationed near British movie theaters that ran American films with weirdly dubbed British slang. So instead of soda, the hero would order a fizzy drink. It was like watching your own culture through a funhouse mirror. You're introduced to British rations, bully beef and biscuits, and quickly decide you'd rather eat your own boot. Still, it's hard to complain when the locals are enduring rationing, air raids, and blackouts. A few families invite soldiers like you over for Sunday roast, and the kindness nearly breaks you. And let's not forget the social scene. A local pub becomes your haunt. Dim lights, sticky floors, and a piano missing 2 keys. The bartender, a woman named Mabel, calls everyone Lou and pours something called bitter that tastes like sadness and rust. You drink it anyway, because it's warm, and you need warmth. There's dancing sometimes. Someone drags in a phonograph and plays swing records until the generator sputters out. The Brits teach you how to dance without stepping on each other's feet. You teach them how to play poker and lose badly. But every smile, every laugh is cut with something darker. You all know why you're here. Historians still argue whether the wait in England helped soldiers mentally prepare or just left too much time for dread to fester. Some say it was crucial for building cohesion. Others say it turned men into over-sharpened knives, twitchy and ready to snap. You're somewhere in between. You're closer to your unit than ever, but some nights you lie awake imagining the beach, the chaos, the gunfire, the cold surf around your knees. You dream of your hometown, your mom's porch, your dog. You wake up sweating. Then one night the briefing comes. Officers call you into a tent. Maps, red lines, code names. Operation Overlord. You're handed sealed instructions, told to memorize your objectives. You'll be in the first wave hitting a place called Omaha Beach. The date? Still a secret, but now it's real. You stumble out into the cool night air, the stars muffled behind low clouds. A breeze stirs the canvas of the tents. You stand there, still, staring at the horizon like you expect to see it coming. The war, and maybe you do. The waiting ends not with a bang, but with a whisper. A quiet, pre-dawn order filters through the camp. Move out. You and your unit gather your gear in the dark. No one speaks above a murmur. The world feels suspended like time is holding its breath. You're trucked to the coast under cover of a night. The convoy snakes along narrow English roads, headlights blacked out, the smell of sea air growing stronger with every mile. Somewhere near Portsmouth, you reach the marshalling area. And then, suddenly, it's all floodlights, barking officers, and the mechanical rhythm of preparation. The gear's heavier this time. You're wearing your full combat load. Helmet, rifle, entrenching tool, grenades, extra ammunition, gas mask, rations, canteen, poncho, first aid pouch. It's close to 70 pounds of war strapped to your body. You move like a walking toolbox with anxiety issues. You're handed a card with a series of numbers and a letter. That's your landing craft assignment. A young lieutenant tries to smile as he passes them out, but his hand shakes. Mainstream fact. The night of June 5th, 1944, more than 156,000 Allied troops began boarding over 5,000 ships and landing craft. The largest amphibious invasion in history. You're just one name among thousands. Hal mutters something about seasickness and makes you promise to punch him if he starts crying. You agree. Then you both sit quietly on your packs, watching the sunrise stain the channel orange and gray. Before boarding, a chaplain walks down the line, offering prayers. You take one, not because you're religious, but because it feels like armor. Then you're herded up the ramp into your LCVP, landing craft, vehicle, personnel, aka the Higgins boat. Inside, it's cramped and noisy. The metal deck vibrates beneath your boots. Water sloshes in from a gap in the side. The diesel fumes mix with sweat, and someone already looks green. You clutch your rifle like it's going to save you. One quirky tidbit. Many soldiers grease their boots with bacon fat to help waterproof them. You didn't. You're pretty sure that smell's going to haunt you forever now. Then, engines roar. The boat pulls away from the transport ship. The sea is choppy. Salt water sprays your face. You try to look brave, but really you're just trying not to throw up. Or cry, or both. Your sergeant yells over the motor, 30 minutes! You check your gear again, even though you've checked it 6 times already. You run through the landing instructions in your head. Get off the beach. Don't bunch up. Don't stop to help anyone. Keep moving. Keep moving. Keep moving. Historians still argue whether the briefing properly prepared men for Omaha Beach. The maps were accurate, but the reality wasn't. The Germans were more dug in than expected. The tide came in faster. The resistance, brutal. The coastline appears on the horizon like a ghost. It looks peaceful from here, like just another shoreline. You almost want to laugh, but then the Navy starts shelling. Boom! 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 Huge plumes of sand and smoke erupt from the cliffs. Ships in every direction are firing. The sky is filled with black arcs of tracer fire. Somewhere above, paratroopers are already landing or crashing. The invasion is in motion. You're close now. Too close. Machine gun fire rips the water around you. You duck instinctively, heart pounding in your ears. The boat next to yours takes a direct hit. You don't look at it. You can't. 10 seconds, the coxswain yells. You rise with the others, crouched low, rifle up. The ramp hasn't even dropped yet, and you're already wading through panic. Your legs feel like lead. You think of your mom's last hug, the porch swing, Hal's dumb Rita Hayworth dream. The ramp drops. Chaos. Bullets snap past your ears. Water churns with explosions. You leap into the surf. It's waist deep and freezing. You stumble, fall, drop to your knees, your helmet slipping over your eyes. You get up. You run. You don't know where to. Just away from the gunfire. The sand sucks at your boots. Mortar rounds slam into the beach ahead. Bodies fall. You try not to look. You can't look. You just keep going. Somewhere, a flamethrower ignites a pillbox. The heat punches you in the chest, even from yards away. You smell burning hair. Or maybe it's rubber. You can't tell. You're not sure you want to. You make it to a ridge of beach obstacles. Hedgehogs, the metal tank traps. You dive behind one, breath ragged. Hal lands next to you, coughing up seawater. "You okay?" he gasps. You nod. It's a lie, but it's all you've got. For what feels like hours, you're pinned down behind that hunk of twisted metal. You fire when you can, mostly blind. Someone yells orders. You follow them. You don't know who's in charge anymore. Maybe no one is. Eventually, a gap opens in the fire. A squad pushes forward. You go with them. Crawl, run, fall, crawl again. You reach the bluff. You climb, legs shaking. A grenade lands too close. Dirt rains down. You're still alive. You're still moving. And then, somehow, you're past the worst of it. The shooting fades. Your ears ring. Your mouth tastes like blood and gunpowder. You look back at the beach, and it doesn't look like sand anymore. It looks like history. And you're in it. You don't remember how you got to the hedgerows, just that 1 minute you were choking on sand, and the next you're crouched in ankle-deep mud beside a tree line that seems to stretch into forever. Normandy inland is not what you expected. You thought France would smell like perfume and fresh bread. Instead, it smells like manure, cordite, and fear. The beach is behind you, but safety is still a rumor. Ahead lies Bocage country, a twisted natural fortress of tangled hedgerows, sunken lanes, and stone farmhouses that are either empty or armed to the teeth. Your job now? Push forward, inch by inch, through terrain that seems designed to kill you. Mainstream historical fact. The bocage in Normandy became a nightmare for U.S. forces after D-Day. The Germans had studied it for years. They turned every hedge line into a defensive stronghold. Mines, snipers, and MG-42s were hidden behind every bush. American GIs called it Hell's Backyard. And it's raining again. Of course it is. Your uniform is soaked. Your boots squelch with every step. You pass a dead cow in the road. It's bloated and covered with flies. The Germans left it there as a roadblock. Welcome to Europe. Hal says he heard about a guy who stepped on a landmine disguised as a shovel. You start looking at shovels differently. You start looking at everything differently. You're moving in squads now, clearing each hedgerow one at a time. It's like a demented game of whack-a-mole. You take a ridge only to find another behind it, and another and another. No one knows exactly where the Germans are until someone's already been shot. The air is full of buzzing insects, distant gunfire, and the occasional shout of "Medic!" which makes your stomach knot every single time. One fringe tidbit: to avoid drawing fire, some soldiers learned to imitate animal sounds. Bird calls to signal safe movement, frog croaks to alert nearby units. It worked until the Germans figured it out and started doing it too. So now even birds are suspicious. You share a foxhole with Hal. It's barely big enough for one of you. You try to sleep in shifts. You both fail. Every twig snap sounds like a sniper. Every breeze makes your finger twitch toward the trigger. Meals, cold K rations. The cheese tastes like rubber. The crackers taste like cardboard. You're constipated, itchy, and somehow still hungry. You dream about pancakes, Just once, you'd like to eat something that doesn't come in a wax-sealed box. Historians still argue whether the Bocage campaign could have been shortened if the Americans had better adapted to the terrain. Some say yes, pointing to the late introduction of rhino tanks equipped with hedge-cutting blades. Others argue that no amount of machinery could offset just how good the Germans were at hiding and hitting. You finally experience your first real ambush. You're advancing along a sunken lane when the world explodes. Mortar fire, rifle fire, screaming. You hit the dirt, crawling toward a ditch that smells like mold and something long dead. The sergeant yells to flank left. You run, no, stumble through thorns and mud. You reach the hedgerow, jam your rifle through the greenery, and fire blind. You hear a scream, maybe from your side, maybe theirs. You don't look. You just reload and keep shooting. It ends as suddenly as it began. Silence except for the whimper of a wounded man and the buzz of flies returning to their interrupted business. You look down and realize your hands are shaking. Hal appears next to you, face pale. "Did we win?" he asks. You don't answer. You don't know what winning looks like anymore. Later that night, you pass through a village half destroyed by artillery. A French family emerges from a cellar, blinking at the daylight. The mother presses a handful of strawberries into your palm. They're bruised and warm. You eat them anyway. It's the best thing you've tasted in weeks. Then someone points to the nearby church. A sniper. Your squad handles it quickly, and you try not to notice how young he looks when they drag the body down. You're supposed to feel something. You mostly feel tired. Another storm rolls in. You dig a new foxhole in the dark, water soaking your sleeves, your neck, your boots. You huddle in it, rifle on your chest, helmet low over your eyes. And in the distance, thunder, or artillery, echoes through the hedgerows. You've survived another day. But you know tomorrow's coming. And the hedge lines? They don't end. It takes you days, maybe weeks. Time doesn't work right anymore. To fight your way out of Bocage country. When the last hedge line fades behind you and the fields open up, it feels like surfacing after being buried alive. You expect relief. Instead, you're just exhausted. Your eyes are always scanning rooftops, windows, tree lines. You're starting to flinch at birds. But there's a whisper moving through the ranks. Paris. It doesn't sound real. Paris is for romance novels, perfume ads, and black and white films, not muddy boots and bloodied uniforms. But it's true, the push is on. The Germans are retreating, the lines are breaking, and the brass wants the City of Light back. Mainstream fact, Paris was officially liberated on August 25th, 1944, after a swift Allied advance and an internal French uprising. Many U.S. troops arrived in its outskirts just before or just after the surrender, but most weren't tourists. They were too busy watching for snipers. You start marching again, boots blistered, gear rattling with every step. Roads are jammed with tanks, trucks, horses, civilians, and the occasional German POW. You pass scorched villages, burnt-out tanks, and children who wave at you with hollow eyes. The countryside begins to change. The houses are taller, the fences neater. You smell baking bread. Baguettes, real ones. Somewhere out there, someone is still making breakfast while the world falls apart. In one liberated town, old women offer you wine and kisses. A French girl gives Hal a flower. He pins it to his helmet. You don't say anything, but you're fairly certain he's now married under some obscure village law. One quirky tidbit. As Allied troops entered liberated towns, French cafes reopened overnight, often serving watered-down coffee made from roasted acorns. You drink a cup. It tastes like mud and optimism. But as you near Paris, things tense up again. The Germans are dug in outside the city, trying to hold back the tide. You fight through artillery fire, dodge snipers, and learn that even paved roads can be booby-trapped. A truck in front of you explodes. You hit the ground. Dirt showers your helmet. You start to hear gunfire echoing from inside the city. Historians still argue whether Eisenhower's decision to liberate Paris early was strategic or symbolic. Some say he wanted to avoid a drawn-out siege. Others believe he feared the French resistance might take control before the Allies arrived. Either way, it's happening. You finally reach the outskirts on foot, marching past wrecked cars and shell holes. Then you cross into the city, and suddenly, Paris. Not like the movies. The streets are scarred, the buildings blackened by smoke, but still, it's Paris. The Eiffel Tower looms in the distance. Notre Dame stands proud and chipped. People crowd balconies, waving flags. There's music, real music, played on an accordion by a man standing atop a rubble pile. You don't cry, but it's close. Hal actually does cry. He covers it by yelling something about needing coffee. No one calls him out on it. You're directed through the city to secure a government building. On the way, civilians offer cigarettes, wine, and hugs. A little boy gives you a drawing, stick figures with American flags. You tuck it into your jacket pocket like it's made of gold. One fringe fact: some GIs arriving in Paris were so desperate for comfort, they offered entire paychecks for a hot bath and real sheets. You settle for washing your face in a fountain and sitting on a real chair for the first time in weeks. The liberation is messy. There are gunfights in alleyways. Collaborators are dragged into the streets by angry mobs. You're ordered not to interfere, but you hear the screaming. You don't look. Still, that night you sit with your squad around a small cafe table. Someone finds a bottle of champagne. It's warm. No one cares. You drink and laugh like you're in a dream. For a few precious hours, the war feels far away. You fall asleep on a stone step with your helmet over your face and your rifle cradled in your arms. The city hums around you, wounded, alive, reborn. Tomorrow the push continues, but tonight Paris is free. And so, for a heartbeat, are you? You leave Paris behind like a half-remembered dream, warm in your chest but already fading. There's no time to linger, not with new orders in your hand and the front line stretching east like a snaking scar across the map. Trucks carry you for part of the way, but a lot of it's still on foot. Marching, always marching. The scenery changes again. The sun disappears more often. The roads get narrower. The forests grow thicker. And the mud, dear God, the mud, becomes a constant companion. You've entered the Hurtgen Forest. Mainstream historical fact: the Battle of Hurtgen Forest lasted from September 1944 to February 1945. It was one of the longest, bloodiest battles the U.S. Army ever fought, and many historians still debate its necessity. Historians still argue whether it was a strategic blunder or a grim necessity to protect the southern flank of the Ardennes, your lieutenant says during the briefing, using words like objectives and tactical importance while you try not to fall asleep standing up. Then you step into the trees. The forest is dark. The canopy chokes out the sky. You can't see 10 feet ahead, and everything smells like damp bark and rot. The ground is mush. You slip constantly. Your boots are never dry. Your socks become your most precious possession again. There's no room for tanks, no air support, no easy way in or out. And the Germans? They've been waiting. They know the terrain. They've fortified bunkers, planted mines, strung tripwires, and set ambushes along every trail. You spend your days crawling, ducking, whispering. You feel more like prey than predator. And the weather, always rain. The cold kind. Not dramatic downpours, just relentless drizzle that seeps through everything. It slides down the back of your neck, soaks your gloves, turns your rations to mush. One quirky tidbit: Soldiers started calling it the Forest of Death, not because of the gunfire, but because trees exploded, literally. When artillery hit the treetops, it sent wooden shrapnel in every direction. Guys started preferring open fields to cover. Better a bullet than a branch, someone mutters. No one disagree. You're constantly on edge. You sleep in shifts, dig your foxhole deeper each night, try to joke but laugh less than you used to. Hal keeps a tally on his helmet for how many days he's gone without taking his boots off. It's not funny, not really. Meals are eaten cold, quickly, and silently. You start calling it mud stew. Not because of the food, because the mud ends up in everything. Your socks, your rifle, your mouth. You chew grit between bites and pretend it's seasoning. One day, your patrol hits a minefield. The guy 2 paces ahead of you disappears in a flash. There's no scream, just a puff of smoke and a wet noise you'll never forget. The squad freezes. No one moves. For nearly an hour, you just wait. Eventually, engineers clear a path. You step around what's left and pretend you don't see the boot lying 10 feet from the crater. You start hearing phantom footsteps at night, imagining snipers behind every tree. You stop trusting your ears. You sleep with your hand on your trigger. You're not the only one unraveling. One guy just walks off into the woods. Doesn't come back. Another breaks down mid-firefight, rocking back and forth, whispering his mother's name. Medics carry him away. Still, the orders keep coming. Clear another trail. Secure another ridge. Take another pillbox. You're running low on ammo, but no one seems surprised anymore. Your unit takes a high point near the forest edge, and for the first time in days, you can see open sky. It feels like freedom. Hal grins, half crazed. Maybe it's over, he says. Then a shell slams into the ridge. You wake up on your back, ears ringing, vision blurry. There's dirt in your teeth, blood on your sleeve. You roll over and vomit. Hal's lying a few feet away, unconscious but breathing. You shake him until he groans and curses. You're still here, somehow. And yet part of you isn't. You left it somewhere in the trees, with the smoke, with the screams, with the quiet. By the time you're pulled from the forest and loaded into a transport, you're not even sure what month it is. The guy next to you is weeping quietly. You don't ask why. You both know. As the truck rumbles away from the Hurtgen line, you lean your head against the canvas and close your eyes. You survived, but you're not sure you'll ever stop hearing the forest breathe. The forest stays with you, clinging to your skin like smoke. You're thinner now, quieter. Your hands twitch when they're still too long. The medics called it combat fatigue, but you and your buddies just call it what it is. Being human in a place designed to break you. You barely have time to rest before the next orders arrive. There's talk of something big, a counterattack. Rumors churn through the ranks like a bad stew. The Krauts are regrouping. It's happening near Belgium. They're throwing everything they've got. And then you hear it. Ardennes. You thought winter might slow the war down. It doesn't. If anything, it makes it worse. Mainstream historical fact. The Battle of the Bulge began in December 1944 and became the largest and bloodiest battle fought by the U.S. in World War II. The Germans launched a surprise offensive through the Ardennes forest, aiming to split Allied forces and capture Antwerp. You're rushed by truck toward the front. No time for new boots, no time for new coats. Just grab what you've got and go. The roads are iced over. Snow blinds you. Your breath freezes on your scarf, and the wind cuts through your uniform like paper. You're dropped into the town of Bastogne. You're not sure how to pronounce it, but the cold is universal. The snow is deep, and so are the foxholes. You dig them through frozen earth, trading off with Hal every 5 minutes because your fingers go numb if you stay still too long. The sky is a flat gray smear. Artillery rumbles in the distance. Supplies are late. You're low on food, low on ammo, and surrounded. One quirky but true detail. Some troops in Bastogne used Christmas wrapping paper as insulation. A Red Cross truck had brought it before the siege. You find a bit and line your helmet. Hal tapes some to the inside of his jacket and calls it battle tinsel. You hunker down. The Germans bombard the town constantly. Your foxhole feels more like a grave every day. You eat cold beans with a frozen spoon and dream of warm socks and silent nights. Then comes the moment everyone remembers. A German officer sends a message through the lines demanding your division's surrender. General McAuliffe's response? One word: nuts. You don't hear about it until later, but when you do, it spreads like wildfire. Even freezing, starving, surrounded, you all grin. You start saying it to each other like a spell. Nuts. As if it'll keep the shells from falling. Historians still argue whether the Bastogne stand slowed the German advance enough to change the course of the war. Others argue the cost in frostbite and blood was too high. For you, it just feels like another corner of hell. Christmas passes in silence. Someone finds a bottle of bourbon and passes it around. You sip and cough and laugh a little too hard at Hal's story about the time he tried to ice skate in Georgia and broke his front teeth. You can't picture snow in Georgia. You barely remember what sunshine feels like. Then, on a morning so cold, your rifle nearly freezes to your gloves, you hear engines, American tanks, reinforcements. The siege is lifting. You're alive. Barely. The relief troops bring fresh boots, food, blankets. You eat so fast you nearly choke. You sleep 14 hours in a tent that smells like wet canvas and salvation. The Ardennes cost thousands of lives. It broke some men. You see it in their eyes. You feel it in your bones. And yet, you're still standing. Not because you're brave or strong or anything like a hero, but because you had no choice. You moved forward, one frozen foot at a time. They pull you out of Bastogne before your toes turn black, though for a while it's a close call. Your feet tingle constantly, and you have to check them every morning to make sure they're still attached. You get a pair of dry socks and a new coat. 2 miracles in one day. You're still cold, but now it's the kind you can survive. You're not sent home, of course. The war's not over. It's just moved east again, across the border and into the heart of Germany. The enemy's still retreating, but like a cornered animal, desperate, dangerous, unpredictable. You're moving through ruined towns now, one after another. Buildings shredded by bombs, churches without roofs, cobblestone streets turned to rubble. You walk past German civilians, mostly women and children. Some cry, some stare, some pretend you're not even there. You don't know how to feel about them. Mainstream historical fact. As the Allies advanced into Germany in early 1945, they encountered a population both shell-shocked and at times hostile. Propaganda had told civilians for years that Americans would kill them all. So many are terrified. Others are defiant. Your orders are clear. Advance, secure, hold. You sweep through house by house, kicking down doors, checking basements. Sometimes you find frightened families, sometimes just silence. One day you find a piano. It's sitting in a shattered living room, dust-covered but intact. Someone, you don't know who, sits down and plays a few notes. Just a little waltz. It sounds out of place, like beauty wandered into a graveyard. No one speaks. Then you move on. The deeper into Germany you go, the heavier everything feels. The forests get darker. The days feel longer. You're told to watch for Volkssturm, the last-ditch militia made up of old men and teenage boys. You don't want to shoot a 14-year-old, but you might have to. One fringe tidbit. German soldiers began booby-trapping everything. Even chocolate bars, even helmets. You stop picking up souvenirs. Hal picks up a fork, and you slap it out of his hand. He doesn't argue. The weather begins to thaw. Spring is coming. You should feel hopeful. But all that warmth does is reveal the mess. The melted snow uncovers more bodies, more wreckage, more reminders of what this all costs. You pass through a small town that surrendered without a shot. The mayor comes out with a white flag. His hands shake. You can tell he's been waiting days, maybe weeks. You take over the town hall, post guards, and try to find beds that aren't filled with lice. That night, you sleep indoors, for the first time in weeks. A real roof, a real pillow. You almost cry. You don't, but almost. Historians still argue whether the final months of the war were more psychologically damaging than combat itself. You've heard it called the empty stretch, a period where the end is near, but the killing keeps going, where soldiers become numb, automatic. You feel it. That numbness. You move because you're told to. You shoot because you have to. You eat when someone hands you a can, sleep when they tell you to rest. You've stopped asking what town you're in. They all start to look the same, but not everything is grim. One evening, a group of French POWs is liberated by your unit. They burst into song, actual song, arms raised, tears streaming down their faces. You don't understand the words, but the emotion is loud and clear. Hal says it's the first time he's felt anything in weeks. Another day, you come across a barn filled with chickens. You start collecting odd things, buttons from old uniforms, torn up letters from abandoned desks, a silver spoon from a looted Nazi mansion, trinkets that feel like they might make sense of it all. They don't. One day, you're posted outside a town that once belonged to a minor German prince. The castle still stands, ornate columns, velvet drapes. The walls are lined with oil paintings, all staring down at you with bored expressions. You and Hal walk the halls like tourists, stunned by the opulence. "Can you believe this is the same country?" he whispers. You can't. Not really. And then the brass drops a word you've been waiting for, but never believed you'd hear. Surrender. The Reich is crumbling. Hitler is rumored dead, maybe suicide, maybe gone underground. Berlin is falling to the Soviets. The Germans are done. Still, you're cautious. Nothing in this war has been easy. You advance slowly, like it might still bite you on the ankle. Then, outside a town called Torgau, something strange happens. You see Soviets. At first, it's just uniforms in the distance. Then the handshake, awkward, clumsy, cameras clicking all around. You shake hands with a Russian who doesn't speak English but grins like a kid. He offers you vodka. You offer him K-rations. You both laugh and gag. Quirky historical detail. The meeting at the Elbe River on April 25th, 1945, marked the first contact between American and Soviet forces. The soldiers got along well, at least at first, exchanging patches, photos, and booze before the politics kicked in. You're pulled back for a bit. No one wants a friendly fire incident between allies. Your unit sets up camp in an orchard. It smells like blossoms and burned fuel. You sleep on a cot, a real cot. For the first time in forever, you don't wake up sore. Historians still argue whether the suddenness of the German collapse caught the Allies off guard. Some say the war ended exactly as planned. Others believe it all fell apart faster than anyone could manage. You start hearing news from all directions. Hitler is definitely dead. Mussolini too. Italy's gone. Berlin's taken. A new German government is trying to pick up the pieces. And then, on May 7th, 1945, The radio crackles in camp. Germany has unconditionally surrendered. You don't cheer, not right away. You sit on your cot and stare at your muddy boots and think, this is it? This is what it feels like? Hal throws his helmet in the air. Someone yells, "We made it!" A few guys dance, a few more drink. You sit still. Then you get up and walk away for a moment. You stand beneath a tree in that quiet orchard. You listen to the birds. You feel the breeze. You close your eyes and just breathe. You're still alive. But you're not the same person who landed at Omaha Beach. That version of you was loud and raw and full of nerves. This version, this survivor, is quieter. Wiser maybe. Definitely older. Even if the calendar disagrees, you're told you'll be staying in Europe a little longer. Occupation duty, stabilization, paperwork. But for now at least, the guns have gone silent. And in that silence, you hear your heartbeat. It still works. So maybe you still do too. The war may be over, but peace isn't as simple as flipping a switch. Not for Europe, and not for you. You're assigned to occupation duty in Bavaria, the southern slice of what was once Hitler's prize. It's a land of green hills, mountain peaks, quiet villages, and reminders of what just ended. The Nazi banners may be gone, but the shadows are still thick on the walls. Your new mission? Maintain order. Enforce surrender terms. Dismantle the Nazi machine piece by piece. And wait. You're really, really good at waiting by now. Mainstream historical fact. After the German surrender, U.S. troops remained across the country to help with demilitarization and denazification. This included disarming soldiers, interrogating officials, distributing aid, and supervising the rebuilding of civic life under Allied control. At first, the mood is tense. Locals eye you warily. You stand guard outside government buildings and confiscate weapons from barns and cellars. Some Germans claim they didn't support the Nazis. Some cry. Others spit at your boots. It's hard to know who's lying. Maybe all of them, maybe none. You sleep in what used to be a Nazi officer's mansion. Marble floors, chandeliers, an absurd number of clocks. You hate how comfortable the bed is. Hal finds a bathtub and insists on filling it every other night, even if he has to use helmet after helmet of water to do it. You think this is what Hitler used? He asks, towing the water. If he did, you say, and we should drain it. One quirky tidbit. Some American GIs adopted stray German dogs and trained them with command words in fake German. Real, live, non-explosive chickens. You and the guys managed to catch 2. You cook them over a campfire using mess tin lids. It's the best meal you've had since Thanksgiving, possibly ever. Then the lieutenant tells you to keep moving. There's word of something happening further east. Something strange. No one says the word yet, but it's coming, and it will change everything. You're advancing deeper now, and the war's turning. Strange. The resistance has thinned. German troops surrender faster. Some march toward you with their hands up, eyes hollow. Others abandon their posts entirely. You stumble across camps, empty of soldiers, but littered with crates, burned papers, and broken equipment. It feels like the enemy is dissolving in front of you, but the feeling in your gut isn't relief. It's something colder, heavier. Then one morning, you're ordered to approach a small complex of buildings outside a town called Ordruf. You're told to be careful. The brass is cagey. Proceed with caution. Expect resistance, the captain says. But what you find isn't resistance. It's silence. And then the smell. You smell it before you see it. Before you hear the buzz of flies. Before you round the corner of a low concrete building and see bodies. Piles of them, stacked like cordwood. Starved, broken, still, you freeze. Your first thought is that this can't be real. Your second is that you might be sick. Mainstream historical fact. In April 1945, American troops liberated Ohrdruf, the first Nazi concentration camp discovered by U.S. forces. It was a subcamp of Buchenwald. What they found there, mass graves, torture rooms, incinerators, was worse than any battlefield. You move through the compound in stunned silence. The buildings are half empty now. Guards fled days before. The few survivors you find are barely alive, emaciated, eyes sunken, limbs trembling. They reach out with skeletal hands and murmur in languages you don't know. One tries to salute. Another says, "Americans," and weeps. Your medic drops to his knees, crying. Hal leans against a wall and vomits. You do what you can, give water, share rations, find blankets, but it feels like trying to put out a house fire with a teaspoon. You're ordered to keep going, but you can't. Not yet. The officers are shaken. One radio call brings reporters and generals. General Patton visits and nearly faints from the stench. Later, he orders German civilians from nearby towns to walk through the camp to see what they allowed to happen. Some protest. Most go pale and quiet. One quirky, haunting detail. You find a notebook, written in careful German. It lists prisoner numbers, food weights, punishment schedules, all neatly organized, like it was a farm ledger. You realize these weren't random killings. They were accounted for. Historians still argue whether U.S. soldiers were prepared to handle what they found in the camps. The answer for most is no. There was no training for this. No way to unsee it. That night you sit outside the compound. The air still reeks of ash and decay. You stare at your boots. They're covered in mud. And something else. Hal lights a cigarette with shaking hands. "This is why we're here," he says, voice hoarse. You nod, but you don't speak. Words feel small now. You thought you'd seen the worst of war. You were wrong. A few days later, you move out. The road is quiet again, but nothing feels the same. You walk slower. Look longer. Carry more than your pack now. You don't sleep much. When you do, it's shallow and jagged. Your dreams are loud, and always there's the smell. You'll never forget it. None of you will. After Ohrdruf, everything changes. The jokes stop. The teasing dies down. Even Hal doesn't crack wise anymore. You all move like ghosts now, silent, watchful, heavier than before. Not just from the gear, but from something else. Something that followed you out of that camp and stitched itself to your spine. The days grow warmer. Spring pushes the war forward like a tide. The Germans are collapsing, and your officers say the end is near. But the dying hasn't stopped. Not yet. You press further into central Germany, clearing towns, guarding bridges, watching your maps shrink. You pass through villages that surrendered without a single shot, and others that resist even now, firing pot shots from church steeples and haylofts. You don't hesitate anymore. If it moves and shoots, you shoot back. Mainstream historical fact: as Allied troops pushed through Germany in April 1945, resistance varied wildly. Some units surrendered en masse. Others, especially those still loyal to the SS, fought with bitter desperation, prolonging the war even as it crumbled around them. In one town, a boy, maybe 16, fires at your column with a bolt-action rifle. He hits no one. You find him crouched behind a fence, terrified and crying. You don't know what to do. Your sergeant cuffs him and walks him away. No one says a word. Turns out the dogs didn't care as long as they were fed and loved. Your squad unofficially adopts one, a mutt with a half-burned tail. You name him Sergeant Noodles. The paperwork piles up. You help process refugees, monitor curfews, break up fights in the local market. You assist with the disarmament of the Volkssturm, most of whom are now just tired old men trying to pretend they'd never worn armbands. Some probably hadn't. Others had photos on their walls that told a different story. The hardest part comes when you're assigned to escort a convoy to Dachau. You thought you were prepared after Ohrdruf. You weren't. The camp had already been liberated, but the dead still linger. The living are barely more than shadows. The buildings stink of smoke, lime, and grief. You help carry survivors to ambulances. One man tries to give you a hand-drawn Star of David as thanks. You keep it in your breast pocket from then on. Historians still argue whether the U.S. response to the concentration camps was fast enough, or whether the military had sufficient resources to help the liberated prisoners. Most agree they did their best with what they had, but best doesn't feel like nearly enough when you're there, looking into those eyes. You write a letter home that night. You don't talk about Dachau. You just say you're tired. You end it with, "Tell Dad I finally understand why he never talked about the trenches." Days blend into weeks. Patrol, check-in, report. You attend a small mass in a bombed-out chapel. A priest blesses your rifle. You nod, but you're not sure what that's supposed to fix. Hal talks about going home and becoming a mechanic. You say you might teach. He laughs. Teach what? How to dig a foxhole in 30 seconds? Yeah, you say. Or how to survive 4 kinds of canned meat. You both laugh. Real laughter. For the first time in weeks. It feels strange. Good. Human. Eventually, word spreads that some soldiers are being rotated back home. There's a lottery. Your name isn't drawn. Hal's is. You help him pack his duffel in silence. You'll be fine, he says. Of course I will. You lie. He leaves. You stay. The weather warms. Flowers bloom in the fields. Sergeant Noodles gets fat on scraps from the officer's mess. You patrol the edge of a forest and watch a group of German kids play soccer with a ball made from bundled rags. They wave at you. You wave back. Something in you softens. Just a little. You're still here. And somehow that's enough for now. Summer settles over Germany like a balm, but it doesn't quite heal. Not yet. You're rotated to a new town nestled near the Austrian border. It's postcard perfect. Red-roofed cottages, flower boxes and windows, a clock tower that chimes every hour like nothing ever happened. It feels fake, like a movie set waiting for someone to yell, "Cut." But the war happened here too. You walk the streets with a rifle slung over your shoulder, nodding at passersby who try not to make eye contact. You visit former Nazi offices, turned into Allied command posts. You check attics and basements for stashed weapons and documents. Sometimes you find them. Sometimes you find nothing but silence and a stale whiff of fear. One quirky tidbit. In some towns, Allied soldiers found rooms full of Nazi memorabilia, packed in suitcases, hidden behind false walls, as if their owners hoped to one day pull it all back out and start over. You and the others burn what you find. It smells like glue and failure, but mostly you wait and wonder. You read newspapers from back home, slowly, carefully, headlines about victory, ticker tape parades, celebrities visiting hospitals. It feels like another world, a faster one. You hear that guys are coming home to jobs, girls, parties. You try not to be bitter. You're glad they made it. You just wish your world moved that fast again. Instead, your day starts with inspection and ends with a patrol around the edge of town. You learn to speak a little German, enough to barter for cigarettes, or tell kids not to climb into wrecked vehicles. One kid calls you uncle. You pretend not to like it, but you do. Mainstream historical fact: the U.S. military governed parts of Germany for years after World War II, managing food distribution, curfews, war crimes investigations, and the rebuilding of civil infrastructure. It was as much political theater as military operation. You helped distribute food. Rations arrive by the truckload. Locals line up, ration cards in hand, you see proud men humbled, hungry kids standing perfectly still. You do your job, mark the card, hand the tin, but you can't help wondering who supported what, who hid who cheered when bombs fell on London. There are whispers now about Nuremberg, trials, crimes, executions. You don't talk about it much, but you read the reports. Some of the names are familiar. Officers you passed, towns you marched through. The paper doesn't print pictures of the verdicts, but everyone knows what they mean. Historians still argue whether Nuremberg brought justice or just closure. Some say it was necessary to set a precedent. Others call it victor's justice. You don't claim to know, but you're glad they stood trial, even if the world still feels off balance. Sometimes you sit alone on a bench at dusk, watching the mountains go purple in the distance. It's peaceful. Too peaceful. You listen for artillery that doesn't come. At night, you dream about beaches, foxholes, and the smell of wet canvas. You've learned how to sleep lightly, eat quickly, and trust slowly. One day, a letter arrives. Your rotation's up. You're going home. Just like that. No parade, no grand speech. Just orders and a ticket and a list of things to leave behind. You pack slowly. Each item feels heavier than it should. Helmet, photos, a rosary you found on a battlefield. Sergeant Noodles tries to climb into your duffel. You pat his head and leave him with the supply sergeant who promises to keep him fed. You walk through the town one last time. It looks the same, but it doesn't feel the same. Then you board a truck and the wheels start turning. The road back is long, full of checkpoints and paperwork and silence. You barely speak the whole ride, but something in you is shifting, like thawing snow, like spring after the longest winter of your life. You board a transport ship in Le Havre, same port where so many arrived, back when the war was still a distant scream. Now it's calmer, cleaner, but your boots remember the mud and your bones remember the fear. The ship's deck groans under the weight of hundreds of returning soldiers. Some laugh, some singing. A few just stare at the ocean like it might open up and swallow everything they've seen. You stand at the rail, watching the coastline fade into mist, wondering what waits on the other side of the Atlantic. Mainstream historical fact: more than 8 million U.S. servicemen and women were demobilized after World War II. Operation Magic Carpet brought them home in waves, often on converted troop ships, with little fanfare and less ceremony. Hal isn't with you. He left weeks ago. You miss his stupid jokes more than you'd ever admit. You wonder where he is now. If he's sitting on a porch somewhere, drinking a Coke. If he tells people about you. You don't know what you'll say when you get back. The voyage takes nearly 2 weeks. You eat in silence, sleep in close quarters, trade stories when the nights get too quiet. One guy gives you a harmonica. You try to play it once and sound like a goose being strangled. You both laugh. As land appears on the horizon, the men grow restless. Some cheer, some cry. You feel unsure, like you've forgotten how to be in the world. You dock in New York Harbor. The Statue of Liberty comes into view, just like they said it would. You feel something twist in your chest. Nostalgia, maybe. Relief. Grief. On the pier, there's a small band playing. No parade, no crowds, just a handful of folks waving little flags. One woman holds a sign with someone else's name. You don't see your own. You step onto American soil with a duffel bag over your shoulder and a 1,000-yard stare. The air smells different, sweet, but unfamiliar. They hand you train tickets, stamps, a folded piece of paper with numbers and instructions. You follow the line, board a coach, and sit by the window. The countryside blurs past. Green, open, alive. You think about things you didn't say, people you left behind, letters you never wrote, ghosts you might carry forever. Historians still argue whether American soldiers received the support they needed upon returning from war. Some got parades, others got silence. Many simply slipped back into ordinary lives, pretending the extraordinary had never happened. Your train pulls into a small station. You step off and walk across the platform. A familiar voice calls your name, your real name, not your rank, and you turn to see your mother, older than you remember, arms open and shaking. You hug her, hard. You don't say much. You don't need to. Your bed feels too soft that night, too quiet. You wake up 3 times before realizing you're safe, really safe. You take a walk around town the next morning. The streets are the same, but smaller. Someone asks where you've been. You tell them Europe. They nod like you said you'd gone fishing. Weeks pass. You mow lawns. You fix the porch step. You go to the store and get overwhelmed by the number of cereal brands. You hear fireworks one evening and hit the ground before you can stop yourself. You laugh, then you cry. You're adjusting, slowly. One quirky detail. You find a postcard you sent from France but had forgotten about. It's addressed to yourself. All it says is, "Still here." You tape it above your dresser. And for the first time in a long time, you sleep all the way through the night. And now, you're lying in your bed again. Not a bunk, not a foxhole. A bed. Sheets clean. Air still. A soft hum in the room like distant wind through trees. The war is behind you now. A world away. Even if it echoes still in the quiet corners of your mind. You close your eyes and picture the first time your boots hit foreign soil. The spray of the sea. The weight of your pack. The fear that gripped your chest and never quite let go. You remember faces. Some faded, some sharp as if they're still with you. You carry them gently, like folded letters in a coat pocket. The noise has stopped. The marching. The shouting. The gunfire. It's just your breath now. Steady. In and out. You made it. You survived what millions did not. And though the war changed you, though it buried parts of you and aged you in ways no one can see, you are home. You feel the mattress beneath you. You let your body grow heavier. You listen to the silence. You are safe. Let the noise of the past drift further now, like smoke on the wind. Let it settle behind you. You've walked the long road. You don't need to keep walking tonight. Rest, soldier. Close your eyes. You're finally home. End of script. Sweet dreams.